worth from a quality perspective, in a broader emerging markets context or just a large economy context, I think India stands out as being the only economy which can actually add labor, capital and productivity as all positive factors. That's a bit of a rare mix which is kind of coming together. Let's switch topics a bit. Let's now go to the FX world and rates and the Fed and all these things. So what is the ANZ view in terms of what the Fed is likely to do? For what it's worth, Macquarie, we had a view that our US economists had a view that we're going to have a few rate cuts in the second half. That's been kind of dialed back. So how are you guys positioned on the Fed? And then what does it mean for the RBI and policy rates in India?
Right. I think this is where most market participants have been caught with surprise, and that explains the entire volatility in the markets the last few weeks, or in fact the last few months. Look, our view is that we've also pushed back our calls for rate cuts in the US. We expect something towards the end of Q3 this year, then something in Q4. Overall, a cycle of about 150 to 200 basis points from the Fed over the course of later this year and the next year itself. That's an evolving view, to be honest, because we just really don't know, how far the US economy will sustain the strength it's been exhibiting the last few months, and how much more would it take for inflation to really settle down at the target so that the Fed becomes comfortable and starts thinking about the other side of the business cycle. India, interestingly, is kind of, I wouldn't say immune, but to a great extent immune to what's happening with the US Fed. And I think one of the most important points there is to remember that we are sitting on FX reserves of about $640 billion, right? That's a really large number. That's about over 60% of our net external debt. By net external debt, I would mean all the FDIs or the FPIs you've received so far. Our reserves are about 60 to 65% of that number, which used to be about, let's say, 30-40% 5 years ago. So we've made tremendous development in making ourselves a lot more stable in terms of having FX buffers should anything happen on the external side. The basic drivers of growth in India. And it's a very strong economic concept we owe to somebody called Robert Solow, who's not there anymore, but he sort of broke down the growth in any economy into three drivers: the labor, the capital, and productivity. Right. Capital is more or less a factor that you can understand, the construction of roads and machineries and things like that. They have a lot of other variables that determine capital. Labor is sort of naturally moving in the sense that India is a young economy. The workforce is quite vibrant. So labor contributes positively to growth, the growth in the workforce. And the last bit is, of course, the most interesting one is the total factor productivity, or generally called just as productivity. I completely agree with Aditya on this point. I think this, despite being the most nebulous of the three components, is also the most exciting. And if I go by my own calculations, then about 40% of the growth that we registered in the last decade actually came from technological gains, the TFP gains. In fact, I'd urge you all to look back and think, let's say, since the turn of the century, if there is one variable that has delivered growth to the world consistently, would it not be technology?